Well, hey, guess what? The next pandemic is already being talked about. Yes, that's right. Bill Gates just released a new book on how the next pandemic will unfold, and he says we need a plan. We need a plan, and I'm going to give it to you. And the World Health Organization has been meeting since about December of last year to put together in place their pandemic treaty, a framework among nations that would basically give them ultimate authority over countries on how to run the show as this next pandemic will unfold. And all you need to do is look at and see what happens when governments do full lockdowns. This is in Shanghai. This is new video out of Shanghai, where the lockdowns continue for 26 million people. People literally climbing out of their windows, making makeshift ladders to climb down because they can't handle it anymore. Now, these people are,
I have one of those.
Can you imagine? These are people, by the way, and we've told you the horrible stories of people jumping to their deaths out of high rises in Shanghai because of draconian government lockdowns. But these people are trying to get down just to get some fresh air to get out of there because they can't handle it anymore.
Yeah.
Now,
I have one of those that goes out of our second story in case there's a fire. And it's terrifying to even go one story down. So to take that into your own hands and say, I just can't stay here anymore. I'm going to do this nice and slow. And even with children,
Can you imagine?
This is crazy. I just want to back up the clock a little tiny bit and remind you that the World Health Organization is the same organization that in 2019 asked China, hey, what's this about, this COVID-19 that you guys are seeming to deal with? What should we tell the world about it? And China said, seems to be bad, but it's not transmissible person to person. So the World Health Organization went with that line, told the rest of the world, seems like it's bad, but not transmissible person to person. And that's what we were told until early January 2020. Now, could the world have done better with information that maybe the World Health Organization verified? Maybe they shouldn't have repeated what China said because they hadn't done their own research, right? And then all of a sudden, boom, science changed. We know differently, right? And so they were parroting something they had not verified for themselves. So this is the organization now that we're going to give global powers. They are not elected officials.
Yeah, let me raise your hands here. How many people watching right now have voted for any member of the World Health Organization? How many of you voted to give them power over your life?
Well, in fact, in a question and answer document that the World Health Organization put out, they said there is some infighting on how this should go, this sort of global agreement. Brazil is very distrustful of other governments, so they're saying they need a leadership position in this organization or they're not going to participate. Okay, Brazil has a democracy that is shaky at best, right? And so we think Brazil should lead it because Brazil, what? Did better than the rest of us? It's so debatable, right?
Right.
And that's the beauty of having different countries where you can decide which social contract you want to live in and agree to for your family. But if there is no variance of social contract and we could just live anywhere because the rules will be the same, that eventuality sucks.
Well, and just think about, not that we're going to hold them up as any kind of, I don't know, at a high level, as people we should be looking up to, but the North Korean government, they had, from what we understand, they had no pandemic, they had no COVID up until last week, right? So whatever they did, presumably, but a lot of, there were plenty of countries that handled this better than others and did it their way, right? And people chose to move to countries because, or move to states that did it differently. Right, what you're doing now is you're literally ceding control.
But can we believe what they're saying? Women there don't even have sanitary products. So according to the government, they don't have periods because it's not something to solve.
I know. I knew I was going on a stretch when I said that. But my point is, hey, look at the Amish population. Right, the Amish population.
They too have periods. I'm sorry, it's not popular to talk about women's biology these days.
I'm not talking about that. Well, I'm talking about the Amish population specifically said, you know what, we're going to treat this like the flu, and we're not going to separate ourselves from one another. There's plenty of great evidence of what happened in the Amish population. They got together when they went to church. They shared the same glass of wine, and so those who got COVID, it just spread through the community, and they had natural immunity. So again, your choice, right? Your body, your choice. But we didn't elect these people. Yes. And if we live in a free society, if you live in the United States and it's supposed to be a democracy, right, or a republic, but you live there, you didn't elect these people to chart the path of your life, but that's what we're moving towards, this globalist power now.
Right, and as immigrants, right? So we live in a country where we were not born. And during the pandemic, it was very apparent to us that we have immigrated to a new place and we have agreed to their social contract by asking for residency of this country. And as the rules were laid out, we were able to ask ourselves, do we still agree to this social contract? And we seemed fine with the rules where we live in Portugal. But everybody has a choice. Everybody has a choice to go, well, most people, right, have a choice to leave their country, go to a different place, and agree to a new social contract. If there is no such thing as variance, then we are all in trouble. We've handed a lot of power to one organization, and I think more appropriate at this stage of the game is a postmortem on how the World Health Organization itself did, right? And so what you just said, that there were communities that were insular that seem to fare better than other communities, that is the appropriate conversation right now. Did we actually have full confidence in vaccine trials? Did the vaccine do what we said it would? Were promises to the people who took the vaccine appropriate, given the fact that we then circled the wagons and asked them to take a third, fourth, fifth, right? These are all questions that we should hear them asking themselves in this meeting, not how can we centralize power and make sure we all do it together.
Some of the things in this document, as they're debating this, as well as consensus between nearly 200 nations, any agreement will require financing. And right, so who's gonna foot the bill for all of this? You will, I guarantee you will, or the taxpayer will, right? The American taxpayer will foot the bill for this, so that just like the United States usually does, if you want to look at what's happening with NATO right now, the United States will certainly step in and foot the bill for this, as long as we have control. What are some of the other big pieces of this, right? We want to make sure that we're going to have accurate reporting and data sharing. This is another big piece of this, right? So great. So make sure that everyone has a vaccine passport. We're tracking everyone. We know all of your movements. We can go into immediate lockdowns and we can crush, like we saw, small businesses. We can, it's going to be consolidated in the hands of a few. If you think this is kind of conspiracy theory stuff, you should think differently about it, because it's all happened, right? It's all come true. Carol Roth, the author of The War on Small Business, How the Pandemic Crushed Small Businesses because lockdowns killed small business in favor of the Walmarts and Targets and Best Buys of the world, and the big consolidated corporate power oligarchs who run Washington and who have money funneling into their candidates were totally fine. They were able to absorb and actually accelerated under this because their competition was crushed. And that's exactly what's going to happen here. But again, we're also consolidating power away from the United States and these separate governments and into these treaties. And now, of course, there's a Stop the Treaty hashtag that's been trending. So you can follow that. You can actually sign petitions to stop this treaty from happening.
It's to ask your elected officials to hold a vote on whether or not you want your country to join this, right?
That's the thing. We have no choice. We elect certain
but this is the
impetus for it, right? It's you elect these officials. They go to Washington, and then this super government, this global government that you have no say over, decides then to join this World Health Organization treaty, and President Biden just goes along with it, so that next time we have a pandemic, President Biden can say, well, the WHO says, and so we can't. We signed a treaty, so we have no say in this. And by the way, YouTube, which has Google and YouTube, which have silenced voices here on the platform and have taken videos down, taken our video down where we highlighted what Pfizer released in their documents, and it's Pfizer's own documents. They said it was medical misinformation, okay? But in their response to us, it says we anything that goes against what the WHO says is deemed medical misinformation. So, the WHO is your boss now, YouTube and Google? Like, again, that's who's running the show here.
And who gets in the room where it happens? Right.
A few people. Bill Gates does.
Bill Gates is an interesting person who gets to be in the room where it happens. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is one of the largest donors to the World Health Organization and gets to be one of the people who chooses what to do, right? He's called for this germ team. He talks about it in his new book out, like about how things can be done differently through better planning and how we can have, Bill Gates is not an elected official.
Really?
And I think a lot of people find him to be a divisive character, myself included. If you read the great book what the Dormouse said, it talks about specifically how Bill Gates took the idea of Windows and just shrink wrapped it and became rich. Like it wasn't even him that. So anyway, okay.
Well,
that's
and
not
hanging
to
out with
say that
Jeffrey
he
Epstein
doesn't have
and-
benevolent qualities, but for the most part, he is someone who knows how to get himself into position to make a lot of money and exert a lot of power and get himself into the room where it happens. And he buys his way in, right?
Right.
And so we all should feel a tiny bit uncomfortable with the fact that the person with the most money, in fact, this Atlantic article about his new book out says, politicians and princes and pretty much everyone takes his call, right? It's the perfect example of how you can buy your way into any influence. And I don't like how that feels.
Well, we have until August, the first draft, and then by August, they're going to have the second one ready to go here. So make sure you call your constituents, your member of Congress. If you're not interested in ceding power to the World Health Organization, stop the treaty.